Good morning, Mayor Elizabeth Hurst. Can you give us a sound check, please?
Good morning. How's everyone?
Good morning.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Good morning, this is Mayor Ingram.
Good morning, Mayor. Mayor William Edwards, can you give us a sound check, please?
Morning, Bill Edwards, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. All right, commissioners and mayors, we should be starting shortly. Just a friendly reminder that, remember, the camera's always on, and if you're not speaking, you might want to mute your devices. Also, we'd like to, from the clerk's office, wish everybody a happy Valentine's.
We love you too.
Good morning, Commissioner Hausman and Arrington. Can you give us a sound check, please?
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you very much. Just a further reminder, you may want to mute yourselves because the camera is always on. We'll be starting shortly.
Good morning. I'd like to call a meeting to order. This is a Fulton County Board of Commissioners special call meeting. Today is Friday, February 12th. It is approximately 10:01 a.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman Rob Pitt,
Present.
Commissioner Liz Hausman,
Present.
Commissioner Bob Ellis,
Present.
Commissioner Lee Morris,
Present.
Vice Chair Natalie Hall,
Present.
Commissioner Marvin Arrington Jr.,
Present.
Commissioner Khadijah Abdul Rahman.
Madam
Mr.
Clerk,
Chairman, you have a quorum.
thank you. And would you call the roll for the mayors to see how many mayors are in attendance?
City of Alpharetta, Mayor Gilbin.
Present.
City of Atlanta, Mayor Bottoms. Chattahoochee Hills, Mayor Reed.
Present.
College Park, Mayor Motley Broom.
Present.
East Point, Mayor Holiday Ingram.
Here.
Fairburn, Mayor Carhurst.
Present.
Hateville, Mayor Hallman. Johns Creek, Mayor Bodker.
Here.
Milton, Mayor Lockwood. Mountain Park, Mayor Steele.
Present.
Palmetto.
Present.
Roswell, Mayor Henry.
Present.
Sandy Springs, Mayor Paul.
Present.
South Fulton, Mayor Edwards.
Present.
Union City, Mayor Williams.
Here.
How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right, thank you very much, commissioners and mayors, for your attendance. We will proceed with the agenda as it is printed. Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda, commissioners.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Second, let's vote, please. Houseman, with all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, it's approved.
Motion passed.
All right, continue, Madam Clerk.
21-0112, discussion with the Fulton County mayors. First item, rental assistance program.
All right, Mr. Manager. Mr. Manager,
Yeah. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear us now?
yes, we can, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Board of Commissioners and mayors. We're going to try a little bit different approach today.
Just a minute, Mr. Manager, there's a lot of noise. What's going on?
It's clear now.
I don't think it's on your end. What?
It looked like it might be a commissioner.
Okay. Continue, Mr. Manager.
Sir, we're going to try a little bit different approach today. It's meant to ensure collaboration, kind of a sense of decorum for these meetings. First thing we'll do is we'll eliminate presentations. So we have sent you the information in advance, and I don't think presentations have really served us well in the past. Also, we're attempting to limit the agenda to one subject, with the thought being that that's also led at times in the past where it's truncated the discussion due to the time involved with each one of these. So as you see, today's principal discussion is on rental assistance. Again, we'll be providing the information prior to the meeting. The Fulton County staff is obviously here to answer any questions, and we'll be glad to do that. And we have for today, specifically Dr. Rochelle, who's the Deputy COO for Health and Human Services, and Anna Roach, the Chief Operating Officer, who've been leading this initiative. We'll also try to make clear if items require collaboration. T-Splost is a good example, or if they're more informational in nature, which this one will be, given the compliance requirements and what's expected of the county. So hopefully, this will eliminate some of the problems, I think, from talking to a number of you, we've all seen, whether it's, again, the presentations generating a negative reaction, too many subjects, some of the input being very aggressively postured, and then the press coverage, most notably, being negative and about comments as opposed to the results, which I think reflect poorly on all of us. So hopefully this will be helpful and accepted in that vein. And then I'll be glad at the end, under other business, to give a brief update on vaccines and the planned move to GICC for next week. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, we're ready to have Dr. Rochelle and Anna Roach provide a brief update and answer any questions that the mayors have.
Mr. Chairman, good morning, and members of the board, as well as our mayors, good morning as well. We don't have a presentation per se, but as the manager alluded to, we did circulate our document last night that outlines our 5 major work streams that we are pursuing in order to get our emergency rental assistance program stood up with a targeted March 1 launch date. We're very excited, and we are using emergency powers authorized by the Board of Commissioners to the manager to onboard our application system partner as well as our payment system partner as soon as possible. We're also excited about all the work that is going into standing up the call center, and that should be underway beginning next week as well. One of the most critical parts of our plan includes a communication strategy. We sent out a preliminary press release this morning, which basically is aimed at letting the community know that we received funding and we are developing a program. It also communicates our target launch date as well. But above and beyond that preliminary, simply we are here press release, we plan to develop a media kit for our Board of Commissioners, mayors, and other elected officials to help us socialize the availability of this program. And we also have a community needs analysis that we'll use to help us to target specific communities and census tracts that we believe are most vulnerable for homelessness, given our analysis of our pre-pandemic conditions. So a very robust communication effort is planned around this program. One of the other significant things that I'd like to highlight is the fact that we are in communication with both the ARC as well as the state of Georgia, and perhaps most significantly, the city of Atlanta, to ensure proper coordination around the expenditure of these funds. And so we believe that our communication plan, as well as our implementation plan for these funds, are consistent with what we're seeing at the state level. And again, it's consistent with what we're seeing happening with the city of Atlanta as well. Our regional coordination is something that has been recognized by all of the communities that receive the direct funding, because part of our compliance requirement is that we have no duplication of funding to either utility companies or landlords in the execution of these funds. So I believe that we are at a good place with respect to executing our milestones to get to a March 1 launch date. And more importantly, I think that we are at a good place with respect to regional coordination as well as communication of the availability of the program. One of the documents that you received last night showed the results of our community analysis, again, which I think is extremely important to determining the overall framework for the program, but also important to our communication plan. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rochelle now to perhaps highlight some of the things out of that community needs analysis, and then talk about our next steps in the program. Dr. Rochelle?
May I make one request? Can someone resend out the materials because I cannot find the email from last night?
Mayor, I will send it to you right now.
Does everyone else have a copy of what was sent out?
No, I don't. This is Mayor Paul.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
This is Vice Chair Hall. Are we going to take questions at the end, or are we taking questions now? I've had my hand raised even before Dick started speaking. Well, when Dick started speaking.
After the manager, Mr. Anderson, finishes his presentation, I think it'd be proper to take questions from commissioners and the mayors.
Okay, because my question is not about what they're about to speak about. It's concerning the agenda.
And
Mr. Edwards?
yeah, I have the emergency rental assistance. I don't have, there's another document that you were talking about. I don't seem to have that.
Okay, Ms. Corbett, would you resend whatever was sent out yesterday to everyone, commissioners and mayors?
Yes.
And what I would like to do going forward is, after you've sent, confirm receipt by each commissioner and by each mayor to make sure that they've received what was sent, what is being sent out.
Mr. Chair, this is Vince Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, this is Vince Williams. I do have the document that was forwarded to us last night. I don't know if there may have been another document. Ms. Roach did make a statement that one of the, I don't know if it's Ms. Roach or Dr. Rochelle, that one of the documents that we have, it is only one document that was sent last night.
Right.
Okay, so
Well,
Madam COO, could you clarify your statement?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is one new document. Mayor Williams is correct. The other document is simply the document that was sent that we did not get to review because of time for the the mayor's meeting that occurred on the 5th. So it
And
is
I
just
guess
one new document.
I
Thank
apologize.
you.
That my request is, can you send both documents so that we can all have them in front of us for this discussion?
That is on the way, sir.
Thank you.
They've been sent.
While we're waiting for that, I'd like to ask my question about the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Are we changing the process for how we create the agenda? It was moved and approved by this body that we were going to utilize the mayors from North Fulton, from South Fulton, and 3 commissioners, myself, Commissioner Hausman, and now Commissioner Abdul Rahman. Are we still going to continue with that process of how we create the agenda?
I assume that that has not changed, and if it has changed, please notify me. I just made an assumption that the parties that you referenced talked about the agenda. But also, going back to the last meeting, I indicated that because of a lack of time, we did not have a chance, the opportunity to talk about the rental assistance program, that we would meet again today because of the importance and the significance of this particular program, to devote all of the time to this item today.
All right, and the reason for my question is not only the comments that were just made by our county manager, but an email that the county manager sent to us following the last mayor's meeting. And so I just want to say that I don't want to silence anyone. I don't care if you do have something that is considered negative to say. I want to hear it, because we can't address our issues and our problems if we don't discuss them. And so, and we have an opportunity when we do have these discussions. So I don't want to silence anyone, and they have a First Amendment right to speak and say whatever they want to say. So I'd like to continue in the same vein that we've been using, that we hear from everyone.
All right, Madam County, strike that. Madam CO, has everyone been resent both documents?
I've not resent.
We're sending them now.
Mr. Chairman, I have my hand raised.
All right, Mayor Ingram, Holiday Ingram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, if there will not be presentations done at these meetings, which have been noticed as public meetings for the public to participate and view, when will the information that is shared with us be shared with the public from the county's perspective? Because if this is a public meeting and that information is to be shared, if it's not happening, if we're no longer going to have presentations and we have people from the public watching, and we're referring to documents that have been sent to the mayors but not shared with the public and are not going to be gone over during this meeting, when will that occur?
I agree with you, Mayor Ingram.
Routinely share these documents at the Board of Commissioners.
So I just have a concern as it relates to open meetings and making sure that information that we have been made aware of and will be discussing during these meetings. So is it going to happen at a board or commission meeting prior to this meeting? Or are we going to have these meetings and talk about things that we've received in our emails but have not been shared with the public to avoid presentations because of the perception or characterization as questions of concerns being viewed in other ways that might not be favorable? And I appreciate Commissioner Vice Chairman Hall indicating that in order to get to real solutions, we have to have real conversations about real concerns and discuss all issues. So if that's not going to happen here, how is the public going to be made aware of what it is that we are discussing? Was this already presented at a previous board meeting? Because it didn't happen at our last meeting of mayors because we ran out of time, and I appreciate the chairman scheduling the meeting this week for it, because the rental assistance is critically important for our residents to help them get through this difficult time. When will that information be shared with the public?
Madam Clerk, would you respond to that question, please?
Well, we do have a copy of the presentations now, if you would like for them to be presented to the public. And they will also go out with the minutes later on this afternoon after the meeting.
Need them to stay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, my hand is raised.
Yes. Madam Mayor?
These meetings stemmed from a lack of communication, and thank you, Ms. Corbett Dominguez. We just got that email. But these meetings stem from a lack of communication over the initial round of CARES Act funding. And sometimes democracy is messy. I understand that there are disagreements in a number of different ways, north, south, by race, by socioeconomic, but we need to have these discussions. And I think they need to be full discussions with presentations, because we have our council members who are looking at these meetings to gain additional information. I understand that it is difficult at times. We are dealing with some very, very tough decisions, whether it's today's conversation regarding rental assistance, whether it was vaccinations last time, T-SPLOS. These are critically important issues for the entire community. So I think a full-bodied, transparent discussion of those issues needs to happen when we're together. I understand that you may not like what the AJC writes or what anyone has to say about it, but the fact is that we've made progress in these meetings. We are opening up a vaccination site at the GICC because of the discussions here and the work that's been done by the county, the Board of Health, the City of College Park. We've got to be able to push some of these other issues aside and get down to the heart of the matter. And I don't know that there's a better place or time to do it than here.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Houseman?
I agree with that. And actually, these meetings started years ago. We've been having meetings with our mayors for probably 5 or 6 years now. We did have a lapse during the initial stages of COVID, and I think we paid the price for that with our relationships. And so I don't want us to get back to that place. We're all very passionate people, or we would not be doing these jobs. I do think that as much as possible, if we can get on track to work together and as a team and not as adversaries, we'll all benefit. But I agree, the presentations are important. Sharing the information with the public is vital. I'm glad our councils are now available to listen in, because they're obviously a big part of what we do as well. So I think the presentation should continue. I do think we have to be careful, though, that we don't put too much on our agendas. As we saw at the last meeting, sometimes the conversations go longer than anticipated based on the topic, but we've got some big decisions to make in the next few months together. And I think that having the presentations will help us.
Okay, anyone else?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Ellis?
I don't want to mischaracterize, the manager's representations, but I believe what I'm hearing a little bit more said is that it's not, certainly we're looking to share information in advance, but to share the presentation content in advance. And if we're sharing it with this body, I don't see why there'd be any inability to share that with the public, kind of simultaneously, or, put it in the agenda package, just like we would any other meeting. I realize this particular meeting was special because we didn't get to the material at the last meeting, so it was a carryover. But I do think it might be helpful to short circuit some of the content of the presentations, that they can be shared in advance, and we can get through the general content in an abbreviated fashion and move on to whatever appropriate dialogue is needed or questions that need to be raised. Certainly, I wholeheartedly agree. We all need to be able to have the opportunity to speak, but also do recognize that we need to do it in a spirit of feedback and that is productive as opposed to counterproductive, and that does not seek to demonize one another. I do think that aspect is particularly important, and it's particularly important when we're having conversations that are directed towards individual staff members of the county versus versus actually other elected officials. So, just would ask that be taken in the same spirit as you would expect us as county commissioners to correspond and interact with the staff at your particular city. So just wanted to sort of publicly make that statement. But I agree the presentations on some form need to occur, but we probably can short circuit them somewhat so we can get to kind of the meat of the critical discussion that we need to have as elected officials.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, all right. We have, what time is it? 10:26. Just a minute, it's 10:26. We have one item on the agenda today. Commissioner following, we'll hear from Commissioner Abdul Rahman, Commissioner Edwards, and back to Commissioner Hall. I'm sorry, Mayor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to publicly say that I'm going to apologize now. And the reason I'm apologizing now, you're going to be offended by something that I say if you do not have the context or the understanding of why I'm saying it and why it affects my constituents. So I am here to work in a spirit of cooperating and doing what I need to do for the good of Fulton County. However, I'm not here to sugarcoat or to tread lightly because of someone's feelings. We are talking about very, very serious issues. We are talking about issues with vaccination, and we're talking about issues of inequity, and we're talking about issues of making sure that the lesser of these are going to be served. And sometimes those issues will be discussed in a spirited fashion. Sometimes some of us will be offended. Sometimes some of us will not take what's being said seriously. But I think if we get out of our emotions and feelings that it is personal, nothing here is personal. When I came to this board, I came in the spirit of working for the betterment of all citizens of Fulton County. But clearly when there's issues and serious issues of inequity, as in Chair, you even addressed it yesterday with the issue of inequity. So we must understand that at times as these, that we're gonna have spirited conversations. You may be offended, I may be offended, but at the end of the day, we must work out these issues publicly, and we must speak truth to power, especially for those that do not have a seat at the table or who don't feel like they have a seat at the table. So I would echo what the previous commissioners have said and what the mayor said as well, that how do we get to real solutions if we don't have honest, thorough dialogue? And when you have that, some are going to be offended. So what I will say to you now publicly today, I'll apologize, and please keep that apology as a running apology, because you may be offended by something I say, but at the end of the day, we must make sure that all the citizens, and I do mean all the citizens of Fulton County, are taken care of, their issues are addressed, that we have equity in everything we do. The reason that I think that we got spirited last week was because there was an issue, and thank God we had a North Fulton mayor to say he know that he would hate to be in those shoes and feel that way. And I thank him for saying that, because it showed, one, that he had empathy, and two, that there's a real issue and no one is putting forth that there's not an issue. The thing that we need to do as stakeholders for the community is, one, to realize there's an issue, two, to come together and solve the issue, three, to take ownership that all of us have a role in solving that issue, and four, to solve it. So just take this as an open running apology, because some of you may get offended by my words.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor Edwards?
Just briefly, let me just tell Commissioner Ellis that it's very hard to demonize the facts. That's like saying there ain't no Jesus. So what I will say is this, that as we do things, even as we begin to do agendas, let's make sure that the people who are looking at us, whether it be commissioners and mayors, that they get a sense of the fact that we're on the same page, moving in the same direction. That's all I would ask anybody. And like Commissioner Rahman, we're down here as mayors, and all the mayors are noted. We're down here as mayors, and we're on the ground floor. We're hearing directly from the people that we govern, and we try to be encouraged as much as we can to fulfill the demands that they want of us. So sometimes it becomes very personal. So I would say to you, as we move forward, let's put an image of the fact that we are moving together, that we're considering the equity all over this city, and that we all are governing the same people. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I have not been offended by anything that anyone has said during any of these meetings, because the bottom line for me is that we talk openly and honestly to address the issues, to resolve them, and to come to some agreement. But I'm a person who's not easily offended by anyone, because I always operate from a place of truth and honesty and togetherness and collaboration. So please, if I offend anyone, let me know, because believe me, I'm not here to do that. I'm here to do solutions. I want to serve the people, and we're better at serving the people if we do that together. And I want to ask the county attorney to please provide us with an opinion on what we are actually required to provide to the public during these open public meetings, because I do not want us to break the Open Records Act. We have done that in the past in some situations. So an opinion for all of us to have from the county attorney would be helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. Anyone else before we get back to the agenda?
Yes, sir. Vince Williams.
Mayor Williams?
Yes, I think it's important to reiterate, we're all here because we all are concerned about our cities and certainly our county. We have deep challenges, but working together is going to be the only solution. Certainly, as Commissioner Rahman stated, these are going to be some issues that drive spirited discussion, if you will. But as we continue to move forward, we've got to remember that all of us put our names on the ballot as elected officials. So we are absolved from being offended, but we must be respectful when it comes to any staff, city staff, and certainly the county staff. But in doing so, we've got to remember emotions have got to be at a very bare minimum when it comes to our discussions. Ego must be removed. And certainly none of us are entitled to anything. I heard that lesson a couple of nights ago from one of our great commissioners in another county. So certainly I think as we continue to move towards being on the right side of history with this issue and every issue we deal with in this great county, we're going to have some indifferences, but coming to the table of discussion allows us the opportunity to work through those differences and get to a resolve that benefits everyone. So, as we continue to move forward, I ask that the decorum, that we always remain in a spirit of decorum to make sure that we don't get lost in the fight with one another. This is not about fighting with one another. This is about coming together. And certainly, often when we're looking and having these discussions, if we would look at each other sometimes when we're having these discussions, it looks as if some members don't even want to be here, or what the person is speaking about doesn't matter. So we've got to be careful with that. And certainly I have to concur with everything that has been said. It is best for all of us to have thorough, robust discussion to be able to get through this, and equally information from presentations that give us a better perspective on how we need to reach decisions that are needed. So certainly I appreciate what the county manager stated, but certainly it is up to us, those that put their names on the ballot, to carry the water of the meeting. And remember, we can get maligned when we start getting a little too indifferent, if you will. And when I say indifferent, that is when we lose sight of what the discussion is truly about. So I just wanted to share that, and let us not forget that this is about passion, partnership, provision, and certainly protection of all the people that we serve. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. And my role is try to keep us on track. It's about 10:36, and to make sure that we do maintain the decorum. There will be lively and spirited discussion from time to time. So back to the rental assistance program. Madam CO, first of all, has everyone received both documents? Anyone who has not received both documents?
I still haven't. I had made a request through the chat and gave a different email address because we're having problems with their city email addresses today.
All right, it's Miss.
I will ask someone to look in the chat and provide that to me. Thank you.
Can we share the documents as we're talking?
Is that possible?
Mr. Chairman, we're prepared to make the presentation if that would be helpful.
Let's make the presentation then, Mr. Manager, and then we'll be sharing it as well, and we'll continue to try to provide Mayor Bodker with both documents. All right, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir. We're going to be bringing it up.
So,
Can everyone see that document?
Anyone cannot?
Yes, I can see it.
Anyone that cannot see it? All right, everyone can see it, Mr. Manager.
All right, we'll turn over to Ms. Roach.
Good morning again, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the presentation that we did not get a chance to walk through at the February 5th mayor's meeting. Next slide. As many of you probably already are aware, Fulton County received approximately $18 million to provide emergency rental and utility assistance to eligible households within the county and outside of the city of Atlanta. We wanted to underscore the point that the county would be providing these services outside of the city of Atlanta because the city of Atlanta is a jurisdiction that was eligible to receive its own dedicated funding for emergency rental and utility assistance. And so to coordinate our efforts, the city of Atlanta will be planning, according to their chief operating officer, to serve those individuals that reside within the city of Atlanta and have addresses in the city. And then Fulton County will be providing assistance to those constituents outside of the boundaries of the city of Atlanta. For your awareness, the state also received an allocation. Their total allocation was somewhere near $500 million. And so the state will be running a emergency rental assistance and utility assistance program simultaneously as well. According to the guidance provided by the Treasury Department, there are very clear definitions of what an eligible household is. According to that guidance, the eligibility is that at least one individual within the household meets one of the following criteria. They either qualify for unemployment or has experienced a reduction in income as a result of COVID-19. They also need to demonstrate a risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability. Typically, that's demonstrated by rent that has been unpaid, or if they can otherwise demonstrate that they're unable to pay their current rent. And the final threshold for the criteria is that the household income is either at or below 80% of the area median income. The area median income to be used in the calculation for eligibility is the area median income, or AMI as it's called for short, that HUD provides on each jurisdiction on an annual basis. So that is the area median income that we'll be using. Next slide. In addition to the basic criteria for eligibility, the guidance that has been published by the Treasury Department so far includes a couple of additional restrictions that we do need to be mindful of for compliance purposes and as we develop the program to execute here in Fulton County. In general, the administrative allowance for the funding that was received is capped at 10%. So with Fulton County's $18 million, approximately 1.8 million can be dedicated to provide funding for the administrative overhead for the program. And that's a maximum amount. We may or may not in the administration of the program use all of that amount. The other thing to highlight is that the rental assistance provided should not be duplicative of any other federally funded rental assistance program. And that goes to my earlier comments about regional coordination around both a coordinated referral system, but also figuring out how funded jurisdictions can find a way to share information about who's getting funded so that we can do our best to comply with that requirement. The program administrators of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program are required to prioritize eligible households. And this is a criteria that we're paying special attention to because if you recall on the earlier slide, the minimum qualification is that the impacted household or individual be within 80% of the area median income. Well, what this is saying is that we have to prioritize households that are at an income that are 50% below the area median income. And we also have to prioritize individuals that have been unemployed for 90 days or more prior to the application. So even in the vetting and adjudication of applications, we do need to keep track of the criteria as well as the qualifications of each individual that's applying, because we do have to prioritize them based on this guidance for funding, depending on the number of days unemployed as well as the percent of AMI. Another criteria we thought it would be important to highlight is that eligible recipients must be recertified for eligibility every 3 months. So once eligibility is determined, in order for us to continue to assist or provide funding to that household, they have to update their information with the county through its application system every 3 months. Just for awareness, that recertification doesn't apply to assistance for arrearages. So if we were paying, as an example, 6 months of back rent and then seeking to assist that individual going forward, then the recertification doesn't have to apply because, again, we're talking about arrears. The funds may be or must be paid directly to landlord and utility providers. There is some component of the guidance that allows for direct payments to individuals, but there are a strict set of criteria around that, including that landlords have to somehow decline acceptance of the payment and many other requirements. But for the most part, The primary construct of the program is to allow for the payments to go directly to landlords as well as utility providers. And the last requirement is one that we at the county, of course, take very seriously in the execution of the program, in that we are required on a quarterly basis to report progress on the use of funds to the Department of the Treasury. And because we have that requirement in place, we will be ensuring that we have the right technology to manage the complete life cycle of the program so that we will have the data necessary to provide the quarterly reports on the use of funds to Treasury. Again, we expect to be receiving additional guidance from Treasury. There isn't exact guidance on how those quarterly reports are going to be provided just yet. And we're looking again in the regional coordination to try to determine some uniformity of the reporting so that, again, we can make use of that data, even as we're required to escalate it to Treasury. Next slide, please. We did consult the county's law department to help us determine preliminary thoughts about how we would administer the program. And the county attorney's office also sought an opinion from outside counsel, which we circulated to the mayors in preparation for the February 5th meeting as well. And both of those opinions, both internal and external, recommended against distribution of the funds to nonprofits for administering or direct allocations in a pass-through method to municipalities. And so for that reason, as we get to the second presentation that we'll go over with you, the county plans to establish an internal mechanism for distributing the funds that involves a robust application process, evaluation process, and method of executing payments to landlords and utility companies in an expedited manner. The other information to share is that as we had several conversations with the state about their model for administering the funds, they too do not plan to distribute as a pass-through to nonprofits or municipalities for much of the same concerns that we have around compliance and the heightened level of compliance associated with this set of funds in comparison, as an example, to what was available in CARES. I think there was a lot more flexibility in how to quickly administer the CARES funds, where these emergency rental assistance funds have many more strings attached, for lack of a better term. Next slide. Commissioners and mayors, again, this information was what we would have shared with you on the at the February 5th meeting. Some of this has been updated and you'll see that update in the second presentation. But I'd like to turn now to Dr. Rochelle, who will walk through our steps towards meeting a launch date of March 1st for the execution of these funds.
Thank you, Anna. Good morning, commissioners and mayors of our municipalities. I'm Pamela Rochelle, Deputy Chief Operating Officer. So the administration model that Anna just went through and some of the background for that, I'm wanting to walk through what is underway and what we have completed. So we wanted to really get an analysis of how the scope of the problem related to rent and utility arrearages and issues around that. What does the scope of the problem look like? So we undertook an analysis and have completed that analysis, and we'll share some of those outcomes. We are also developing our framework and procedures. We have selected an administrative tool, which will be an application portal. We are continuing to develop our outreach strategies, and you will receive a press release, an initial press release that will provide some preliminary information that you can share with your constituents. We are well underway with establishing our call center and selecting a payment vendor who will administer the payment to landlords and utility companies. We are packaging our training for our assessment team. And of course, we really want to ensure that all that we do will be in compliance with the Treasury guidance and will allow us to report quarterly. We are on track for a March 1st launch. Next slide.
Again, at the time that we would have presented it to you 2 weeks ago, obviously our timeline would have included presentation to the Fulton mayors as part of our immediate next steps, completion of the community assessment tool, the application administration and payment tools would need to be acquired. At the time, we were beginning our discussions about our outreach and communication strategy, and the call center was front of mind because of all of the moving parts associated with that work. I'm going to ask the team that is in charge of the presentations to pull up the next presentation, and you will see that it represents an update from what we would have shared with you at the February 5th mayor's meeting. We did manage to get down the line with some of the activities that we had outlined in the first presentation. And so this one will give you an update from those activities.
We ask a couple of questions before we move on to there. Mr. Chairman.
Mayor, go ahead, please.
You, I think it was the second slide or third slide, hang on, where you were given the criteria. And you mentioned the HUD measurement for a jurisdiction. Is the jurisdiction considered a city or the county?
So the area median income is defined by the Housing and Urban Development Department, and I believe that is a countywide view of the area median income, not the city view. When we originally engaged in discussions about setting our thresholds, we did have that question, Mayor, and thought about whether or not it made sense to look down to the city level. But then once we examined the guidance, it pointed almost directly to using the HUD criteria for determining AMI.
And let me just make sure that I'm clear. When you had the eligible household and you have the 3 bullet points, is it any one of those 3 will qualify someone, or they'll have to hit all 3?
I'll ask the county attorney to help answer that question. The use of the word "and" makes me think that all 3 would be required, but again, I'll ask the county attorney to confirm that or give us guidance on that.
Madam CEO. Madam.
Mr. Mayor.
Can I answer one small question?
Go ahead.
Ms. Roach,
Yes,
you know, we talk about the call center. Could you give me a sort of a visual of what that call center would look like and what it would entail?
absolutely, Mayor Williams. While we're giving the county attorney a little bit of time to help us answer the other question, our call center will be located here at 141 Prior Street. We will begin with approximately 20 call takers. We will be using equipment that the county has access to and a location that the county has access to. And most importantly, we are creatively approaching staffing the call center. While we will be hiring temporary staff to augment what we have, our goal is to use the staff that's currently available to the county in departments that are have moved to virtual programming, and so the staff is more available to assist. So if you think around our senior centers, which are closed, our arts and culture department, and libraries with limited services, we will be leveraging employees within those departments to staff our call center.
Okay, so you're figuring 20 to be ample with some part-time people. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
County, you ready?
Yeah, I'm looking, right, I'm looking, it's so small.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a couple
Yes.
of questions? Okay, thank you. Ms. Roach, one of the challenges that we've had in College Park in administering our CDBG grant for utility assistance is the gap between the documents that are required and the documents that our applicants actually have in their possession. Certainly, I would imagine that most of the folks on this call, if you were asked to provide a copy of your lease or your mortgage or what have you, have that stuff readily available. So one of the things that we have not, one of the challenges that we haven't been able to surmount is the need for someone to help applicants along with that process. So from the administrative perspective, I think it would benefit the county and the applicants if there were some attention to that particular issue of actually helping people along in the process, because we have a number of probably more incomplete applications than completed ones, and it's taking us a lot of time for people to gather those documents. So just FYI there.
Mayor Broom, thank you for that comment. I think that what you'll find is that the application tool that we selected, Neighborly, is very intuitive. And so if you have everything that you need, you can quickly use the online tool and get through the application. To your point of those who need assistance, we're hoping that that will be the highest and best use of those in our call center. Then rather than helping people with the application process, they can address things like helping them walk through the process and identifying the documents that they need. So we believe that the combination of the call center and the intuitive nature of the application itself will, in combination be a good way for us to address some of those things and to provide even additional assistance than just help with the application.
Okay, I do have two more issues. One, I heard Dr. Rochelle say that we would be getting a press release. Is social media collateral going to be included in that?
Yes, Mayor, we will have a social media toolkit as well as opportunities for municipalities to have a link to the application portal. So all applications will actually come through an application portal to streamline the majority of applications. However, we know that there are some constituents that will not have access to the internet. And that is one of the roles of the call center agents, is to assist those applicants that just do not have the capacity to complete an application online. But we do feel that many applicants will be able to use the call center portal. The hours of operation for the call center will be Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. until 7 p.m. and on Saturday from 9 o'clock a.m. until 12 noon. The application is in multiple languages, and so we will have the opportunity to serve constituents that do not speak English as the primary language.
Will the outreach be in multiple languages as well?
Yes, we will work with our Department of Civil Rights Compliance. They have a translation service that's a part of the portfolio, and we will work with them to ensure that the outreach is comprehensive and multilingual.
Fantastic. And last question on my end thus far. The prioritization of households that fall at that 50% below AMI, how exactly is that going to happen?
So the HUD guidance that provides our annual AMI is an annual figure that we receive from HUD. And in the Treasury guidance, it specifically points us to the 50% prioritization coupled with unemployment. In the Neighborly software, it's programmed to do a quick eligibility determination, and it will allow us to prioritize all the applications based on the prioritization criteria. So every day in real time, we can see every completed application that meets the priority threshold.
Understood. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
County Attorney still researching. So Mayor Carr Hurst, followed by Mayor Holiday Ingram.
Thank you so much. This question is for Ms. Roach. Fairburn is a MEAG city, which means that we supply our own electricity to our residents here in the city and other businesses. Is there any special paperwork or applications that we need to do as a municipality to receive these utility payments?
Mayor Carkers, thank you for that question. It's a very good question and one we hadn't done a lot of thinking about. I think at minimum, we would make sure that the city of Fairburn is established as a vendor within our system, but we are working with a third-party payer. So I'm actually going to ask the CFO to see if she can help me with that question. I think we have a path for establishing private utility companies, but I'm not sure municipalities if they have a different path.
Well, thank you, Anna. Good morning, everyone. I think that the best approach would still be for everything to flow through Neighborly. So I believe that the path, and I do think we probably ought to put together some specific directions around this, but I do think that the path would be that the municipality would come through Neighborly on behalf of your ratepayer in order to seek the utility payments. And then from Neighborly, it will flow through automatically to our third-party payer, and they will send you the documentation, the payment, along with the documentation to support what account to apply the payment to. But to Ms. Roach's point, we had not had a specific conversation around receiving a mass request from a utility company. So we may need to have some conversation around that, but I do think we would adhere to it flowing through the Neighborly application so that we are able to track each of the ultimate resident recipients of the assistance.
Mayor Holiday Ingram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was a great question, Mayor Hurst. East Point is also a MEAG city. I know College Park, a number of us are. So it probably would be helpful if we could get that information sent to us about establishing ourselves as a vendor with the county so that we can make sure that we're for that, if that's going to be the route we take. My question.
We're not going to be processing those payments internally. And so that may not be the path, establishing yourself as a vendor with the county. I think we do need to have some discussion about how we ultimately will address MEAC cities, but I agree with the CFO. It will likely flow through our emergency rental assistance application process and ultimately flow to our third-party vendor who will determine what is required from a utility company or a city for payments to be directed to them. So we will follow up. I do have a note and I'll work with the CFO to ensure that we establish a written guidelines on how that process will happen.
Great, thank you for that. That sounds great. My question is about whether or not there is a maximum, so like for each applicant, how much in rental or utilities assistance are they allowed to receive?
So Mayor Holiday Ingram, if you will give us 1 minute to get to the second presentation, we did put some thought into that, and that's outlined in the second presentation.
All right, thank you so much.
That's coming up next. It's going to be very instructive, I think. How are we coming, Madam? Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, the Mayor Bonker, I think we're ready with an answer to your question.
So the first criteria is that a household's income has to be below the 80% AMI. And then in addition to that, the guidance provides that applicants also have to document that they've qualified for unemployment benefits or experienced a reduction in income, incurred significant costs, or experienced other financial hardship directly due to COVID-19 that threatens their household's ability to pay the costs of the rental property or the utilities.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, there's sort of a two-tier. The first tier that you have to reach is that you're below 80% of the jurisdictional HUD measurement, correct?
Correct.
So did Fulton County have a choice in how that was done, or this is just set up through the Treasury guidance for everybody? In other words, based on the recipient of the money, that's what determined the jurisdiction.
Well, the recipient of the money will be the actual landlord. The applicant can be either the tenant or the landlord.
I apologize. Maybe I should say the administrator of the money. In other words, in your case, Fulton County received the money. Does that force the HUD jurisdiction measurement to be Fulton County? Just like I would assume if Atlanta received money, it would be the city of Atlanta? Or did you have a choice in how you determine that?
There is no choice.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Madam CO, would you continue, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I can ask the team to pull up the second presentation, we can walk through that one. Next slide. I covered much of the update on our dashboard that we are using to track progress on the milestones related to our March 1 launch date in my original comments. The only thing I think I would add is that the county is using its enterprise project management solution to ensure that from a management standpoint, we have high visibility on the activities that contribute to our targeted March 1 date. So I would like each mayor and each commissioner to feel assured that this is a priority to our executive team, and we are managing and probably to some degree over managing the activities associated with the funds. And that is not simply because we have a deadline with respect to how long it should take us to expend the funds from a Treasury guidance standpoint. It's really because we have a full understanding that there is a need out there and that people are anxiously awaiting assistance in this regard. So there is a lot of executive visibility into this program. We meet each morning at 8:30 a.m. to discuss our progress on each of these work streams. And so there's, again, a high visibility into the steps necessary to meet that March 1 date from our standpoint. I'm not sure I mentioned in my original comments that the application or award management system is what we're calling it, but it will manage our application as well as all the activities within the life cycle of the program is Neighborly. And if you are a CDBG recipient, you may be familiar with that organization. They do provide rental assistance and have for several years. We think that they will be a very capable partner in helping us to administer these funds. Second, I'd like to highlight the fact that Home Free USA is the payment partner that we are pursuing a relationship with. They too have been in this space for several years and have shown a high capability of helping us to execute these funds in a timely basis. There's a lot of interest about our communication plan. Ms. Corbett is here and has been working very closely with Dr. Rochelle to ensure that the county, the mayors, as well as our commissioners and other elected officials will have what they need to help us get the word out on the availability of these funds. We will be talking a little bit later about how far these funds will take us in terms of the ability to help individuals. And while we want to get the word out, I do want to make everybody aware of the limitation of the amount that we have. $18 million sounds like a whole lot of money until you start dividing it up between the needy neighborhoods in Fulton County outside of the city of Atlanta, but we will get to that. I mentioned before that I wanted to turn it over to Dr. Rochelle to give you a high-level view of the outcomes of our community assessment. I think you'll be I guess pleasantly informed by the information and the insight that was revealed there. So I'll turn it over to her now to walk us through those slides.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Next slide, please.
About 11:10, and we need to get to the numbers at some point. So be mindful, Dr. Rochelle.
Yes, sir. Next slide. So what we have here is just a general overview of the county as it relates to the criteria for eligibility and the renting households. What we really seek in our analysis is to really define the scope of the problem pre-pandemic and to give us an idea of what the profiled beneficiary of these services could possibly look like. So I just want to point out a few things. One, there are over 87,000 renter-occupied households in Fulton County outside of the city of Atlanta. When we look at the criteria, the 80% AMI spending over 30% of their income in rent, we have 37,000 households that currently fall in that category based on our data from 2015 to 2019, and this is the most current data. We developed our proposed rent cap based on the median rent. We looked at the rent across all of the cities in Fulton County, and you can see that in the median monthly rent category. Next slide. This is an analysis with an overlay of the renters with income at 50% AMI and spending 30% of their income in housing. And again, the reason this criteria is important is all of the research indicates that these households are most at risk and most vulnerable for eviction and homelessness. You can see the distribution. The purple or magenta dots show you where these households are located by magnitude. And you can see that across Fulton County, we have households that fall into this category across Fulton County. In the green section with the dots that indicate the 80% AMI and 30% of income, a similar trend here. You can see that there are clearly households across Fulton County outside of the city of Atlanta that meet this criteria. And again, this is important not only for informing the order of magnitude, the scope of the problem, but will also help us target where we will ensure that communities know and understand this program is available since there is strict specific criteria. Next slide. This drills down even more by Census Tract. So again, we wanted to overlay the Census Tract. Again, this is pre-pandemic with the portion of households at most at risk, 50% AMI, spending 30% or more of their income. And so you can see the scale here of 1 to 1,000. And again, there is distribution across the entire county of households that fall into this category. So clearly it's not concentrated only in one particular area of the county. There are families that are at risk countywide. Next slide. Another piece of information that we wanted to glean as we think through how we outreach and inform our strategy is to look at the impact of unemployment across the hardest hit industries. And here you see we've outlined 6 industries: leisure and hospitality to laundry and dry cleaning. And so what we illustrate here is the increases in unemployment in these industries, and the map across Fulton County shows you where these industries have been hardest hit across Fulton County. Again, because one of the criteria deals with unemployment, we wanted to be informed about hardest hit industries and where those industries are, where those workers or employees live across Fulton County. Next slide. This map gives us an idea of where our eviction notices, eviction proceedings, open dispossessory cases are filed. And so you see hot spots across Fulton County. Of course, there are clearly some areas of the county that are in more of an eviction status as far as being a court proceeding. And again, we will be working to align our strategy with the eviction proceedings so that we can inform these families about this assistance.
What is that color? What is that color code? Could you tell us?
So the code that has the orange are the hottest areas, or those that have the most eviction dispossessory cases filed since March of 2020. So the darker the shading, the more intense the dispossessory cases. Next slide. So in summary, we just really wanted to point out that based on pre-pandemic data, 37,000 households are renting in Fulton County, and that Atlanta, we are excluding Atlanta. And so those 37 households are of communities outside of the city of Atlanta. Of the cities, Sandy Springs has the largest number of vulnerable households due to large renting populations, and high concentrations are also along I-85 in South Fulton and the Georgia 400 corridor in North Fulton. In the years before the pandemic, 1 out of every 6 workers were employed in one of the 6 occupations. That was the slide that we discussed, the impact of unemployment across those industries. And it is important to point out what the data do not tell us. It does not tell us today how many households are experiencing loss in income due to the pandemic and how many today have fallen into the 80% AMI. If you recall, I, at the top of the conversation, shared that this data is from 2015 to 2019, and we don't have any data any more current than that. But yet, this is still an informative analysis to help us understand the scope and magnitude of the problem, as well as how we can reach out across Fulton County. Next slide. So based on that criteria, of eligibility and what our analysis is telling us, this is the framework for where we think we can serve the most constituents. So starting at the top, our funding is $18 million with the administrative cost that will go to the call center, the application portal, and any other needed equipment. The $16.2 million is the direct assistance budget. Below that, you see different scenarios. So we looked at $2,000 as the monthly payment for rent. But as we looked at the average, which is closer to $1,300, we are looking more to a $1,500 monthly payment and for 6 months of assistance, which would serve the maximum number of constituents at 2,400 constituents. We will also provide utility assistance. So this assistance would primarily be devoted to rent, and we will also, of course, cover utilities. Next slide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the slide that Mayor Holiday Ingram was probably most interested in based on her question. And again, we haven't made a final determination about which of the thresholds we are using, but we are leaning toward a monthly payment cap of $1,500 for 2 primary reasons. One, because our community assessment data, if you recall the first slide, showed that the average rent across the county outside of Atlanta was $1,300. So $1,500 is more in line with that. But the second reason, as Dr. Rochelle stated, is because if we do drop our monthly payment cap to $1,500, we will be able to serve more at-risk individuals than not. So that, Mr. Chairman, that was all we had in the way of a presentation and a view of our community assessment, and we are ready to answer questions the mayors or commissioners may have.
Okay, so now let's clarify one thing here. This, what you've just shown here for the use of the 16.2, this is for rental assistance only and not utilities. Is that correct?
So that's a good question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, this is only giving us an idea of the number of people we could potentially reach. Again, this is not how we would necessarily distribute the $16 million, because even in our calculation, it didn't include backing out some of the 16 million for rental assistance. It's really just meant to give you a snapshot of how far our assistance could go. So thank you for that question and the ability to clarify, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So the lineup is as follows at this time: Mayor Motley Broom, Commissioner Hall, followed by Mayor Carhurst.
Thank you. Dr. Rochelle, thank you and your team for this analysis, because my former life as a judge in Fulton County Magistrate Court, I saw this on a daily basis. I saw these zip codes in Sandy Springs, in College Park, in East Point. I live in the 30337 zip code, which is one of the highest eviction zip codes in the county. So I certainly understand the numbers and the people behind the numbers. And I really do appreciate the county taking a look at this from a data-driven perspective. The chairman took my question about the whether or not that $1,500 cap contemplated utilities. But what are the plans? I mean, I understand that you're going to get information to us, certainly our PIO teams and such, but for those areas that have these concentrations of vulnerable families, is there going to be extra effort for outreach?
Yes, Mayor, there will be. We had the good fortune of having a very positive and productive relationship with nonprofits across Fulton County. Many of them have already indicated that they know families that fall into these categories of eligibility and look forward to helping us direct those families to our application portal. So we will stay in close contact with all of the nonprofits that do very good work in this space, and that as a part of their core mission provide rental assistance, and we'll be working with them to direct families to us for assistance.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have submitted in the chat something that came from Mrs. Elizabeth Omalami of Hosea Feeds. And her question is, have there been any nonprofits that have been utilized to give their opinion on how this program is being created, administered, and rolled out to the public? Because there are successful nonprofits out there that have been providing the rental assistance programming to constituents in Fulton County. And also she wants to know if moving forward, you will get some input from those successful nonprofits.
Thank you for that question. Yes, we were informed by our strategy through several of the reports and conversations that we've had over the last 12 months as it relates to the implementation of the first round of CARES. We are very interested in continuing a conversation. We can definitely formalize that conversation during the course of the implementation of this program, and we'll definitely look forward to formalizing that in a way that provides an opportunity for even more nonprofits to provide input. As I indicated, they have successfully assisted Fulton County with the implementation of the first round of funding that we received. All of the indications are that there could be additional funds coming to Fulton County, and we will look forward to a relationship with nonprofits if the guidance permits that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rochelle. And I just want to thank you for all your hard work and your team's hard work, for all the jobs that you're doing for us. You are really doing an outstanding job. Thank you.
Mayor Carhurst.
I just want to say thank you, team, again for your work today. Dr. Rochelle, Anna, thank you all so much. Just have one quick question, and my question goes back to your density map that shows the dispensary cases since March of 2020. Is there any way possible the cities can get their actual numbers of the evictions in their cities since March of 2020? The only time I'm hearing of an eviction is when someone is calling asking for assistance. So I'm not sure what my numbers are here in Fairburn, and I would like to get some sense of what it is. And I'm sure the other cities would like to know that also.
Mayor Carhurst, yes, we will look at drilling that data down to the city level, and we will share that with all of the municipalities.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mayor Edwards. Mr. Mayor. Mayor Edwards.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank to everybody too. I think this is good information, but I have two questions. One concerning the administrative costs. Anna, will we get a more elaborate breakdown on what these administrative costs would be?
Mayor Williams, yes, we can certainly.
Edwards, you forgot me already?
I'm sorry, Mayor Edwards, sorry. We provide that. We are developing the budget for the admin costs to submit to the CFO on Tuesday, and we can share it after she has reviewed and approved the budget.
I think that'd be great as a part of the report. So we can actually just, when we say $1 million in administrative costs, what really does that mean? The other question, and I go back, Anna, to the inception, when that first call is made to everybody. Tell me about, one thing we find out when we put these things out, everybody doesn't have a computer, and they need special assistance. I'm reminded, and Mr. Chairman, you're reminded of Commissioner Donnell used to always say, sometimes you just have to buy you some stamps.
That's true.
Because everybody doesn't have a computer. Is there, in that case, and can that person get some special attention as they call in to find the information on how to get the assistance?
Mayor Edwards, thank you so much for the question, and my apologies for the name mishap there. And thank you for the question. Yes, we touched on that a little bit earlier in the conversation. Our call center operators will be prepared and equipped to fully assist someone through the application process over the telephone. And so if you have constituents that do not have access to the internet or a computer, we will encourage you to help us let them know that they can call our call center, and we'll be able to help them fill out the application by phone.
That's great. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Abdul Rahman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I had a couple of questions. So the cap, do I understand that the cap is the most that they can get is the $1,500? Is that the entire cap that they would have to be past due? I just want to make sure I understand what I'm looking at.
That's a good question, and thanks for the opportunity to clarify. That would be the cap on the monthly assistance. So depending on the total number of months that is ultimately decided, they certainly could receive assistance well in excess of $1,500, but that's the cap we're considering for the monthly payment in rent.
Okay, that's the reason I was asking, because I was trying to think of a scenario let's say someone is 3 months behind. And so if they're 3 months behind at $1,500, worst case scenario, $1,500 a month, that's possible, the most payout would be $4,500. Is that correct? In my assessment now?
Not necessarily, Commissioner Abdul-Rahman. We would be able, under the Treasury guidance, we are able to assist individuals with past rent as well as future rent. And so as long as they're within the total number of months that we set for assistance, we could provide that. So in your scenario, we would be able to provide assistance on the past due rent for 3 months. And then if we set a 6-month cap, we will be able to provide additional assistance for 3 months.
Thank you. That's what I wanted clarification on. Also, is it my understanding that the homeowners would be able to apply for the utility assistance portion?
So unfortunately, this program, according to the current guidelines, and again, we don't know if Treasury will change them in the future, but the current program is specifically designed for renters, not.
Oh, okay. I'm glad I asked that question. Thank you. The only, and you are doing a great job in breaking this out for me. The only thing that I would just ask, which you all probably are already doing it, but we are in a pandemic. Whatever you all can do to make sure this process goes as smoothly as possible. My fear is I always think about the worst case scenario, and I always think about that individual that is right there at that point getting ready to be put out. And so anything that we can do as a county, just to make sure administratively that you all get the vendors in place, that it is user friendly, that we have the actual call center up, that we have training with the call center to make sure that individuals who may be our senior population or may have no access to the computer, or may even need advice on what are the alternative forms of that they need to get access to prove that they're behind, that we do everything that we can to get this up and running as soon as possible and least bureaucratic, for the lack of a better word. But that's the only thing that comes to mind, because we are in a pandemic and I'm receiving so many calls daily, and I'm telling people to please hold on. Fulton County, we are working as fast as we can to make sure that we have a process as seamless as possible. We know we're going to have hiccups. We know that it may change, but I'm just asking to always keep in mind that we have people that are just a few days from becoming homeless, and this could really, really help them. Thank you. I appreciate that, Madam CEO.
Thank you.
Mayor Bacher?
Yeah, so if I understand, if I go back to the chart, your ERA community analysis, if you don't mind bringing that up.
What page, Mayor Bodker?
3. And if I'm reading that correctly, I'm using the column that says income, 80% AMI, rent at 30%. Is that sort of the maximum households you think might, based on prior analysis, might be eligible for this? 37,157 across the county?
So that's a good question. This information gives us a snapshot of where the need existed prior to the pandemic. Once the pandemic started, we suspect that many households, even ones that we don't have a view on in terms of need, either lost their positions or otherwise were impacted by the pandemic in a way that would make them eligible. So we are very sensitive to the fact that this information provides us insight, but it does not define our eligible population. Eligibility is going to be determined once an application goes in, but you're correct, Mayor Bowker, it does give us a view of the at-risk households pre-pandemic.
So what that tells me is if I understand that the rented occupied housing units was in the neighborhood of about 87,000 and your maximum there is in the neighborhood of 37,000, and we likely know instinctively that the numbers have only gotten worse in terms of the ratio of the 87 to the 37. If I just use the 37 and I look at the last two options, if we go back to the slide you were on before this, and I apologize, I'm an accountant by training, so numbers are the first thing I look at. And I take the 1,200 households or the 2,400 households, I want everyone to appreciate we're only going to help 3 to 6% of the potential population that's in dire straits.
Right. That is correct, Mayor Bodker, and we suspect based on this analysis that we will exhaust, if not all of our funds in a very short period of time, which is why I made a point to mention the fact that the state of Georgia received $500 million to address this issue at a state level. They have not given us guidance as yet on whether they will wait for funded jurisdictions to exhaust their money before they begin accepting applications from those jurisdictions. But we do expect that vulnerable households will be able to access state funds as well. I just can't say in this conversation whether it will be simultaneous to our program or following the exhaustion of funds in our program.
I appreciate that, but let's think about this. 500 million to the state is probably almost worse than 18 million is to Fulton County. And I understand you can only deal with the funds you have. What I guess I'm trying to raise is the question as to whether you should consider less months of assistance to provide a wider net of assistance to more people. And so I would ask you to consider whether it may be better to cut that from 6 to 3, not because I don't want individuals to be able to get assistance, but you're doubling in that instance the amount of people overall who can get any form of assistance. It's pretty obvious that with this kind of numbers, you'll have this exhausted in no time, and you'll have all these other folks who still need the safety net who will have zero access to it, as opposed to all of them or many more of them getting some level of assistance. So that's just the way I'm viewing it from a pure numbers perspective. I know if I were out there in this position, which luckily I am not, I would want something over nothing.
Mayor Bodker, thank you for that. And I was going to, my limited time to talk today, I think we're going to be looking for some direction from the mayors. I think the 6 months and the 1,500 was just a, sort of working two numbers for us, and some guidance from the group would be helpful. Because you're correct, 2,400 is not a lot.
Mr. Chairman, can I get in the queue at some point?
Yeah. Let's see, Commissioner Morris and back to Commissioner Hall.
I was first, I'm sorry, but I was already standing.
Yeah, I'll
sitting
yield
here
to
with my hand
Commissioner
up.
Hall. I didn't realize the queue was so short, but go ahead, Commissioner Hall.
Trying to take those who had not spoken first and back to those who had already spoken. But however, Commissioner Hall, go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we have seen, the Biden administration has extended the eviction and foreclosure moratorium. However, Commissioner Abdul Rahman raised a very good point about those who may be on the verge of becoming homeless. And I just want to know if you've looked into what is actually happening in Fulton County as it relates to foreclosures and evictions. Is the sheriff serving anyone? Has anyone been put out of their homes or their apartments? Because in talking to my friends who are colleagues who are elected outside of Fulton County and other counties and cities, I'm hearing that their sheriffs are serving people and people are actually getting put out of their homes and apartments. So what do we know about what's happening in Fulton County as it relates to that?
Commissioner Hall, we will check with the magistrate court as well as the sheriff and provide a written response to that. I don't think anybody here has an exact answer to that question right now, but it is a good one, and we will follow up with the mayors and commissioners.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Morris.
Yes, thank you. Like Like Mayor Bodker, I'm an accountant by training, and I was trying to figure out how many people we were going to be able to help here, and that was helpful, Mayor Bodker. But related to that and to Commissioner Hall's question, with the cap, I wonder about folks who, I don't know if these landlords are racking up late fees so that this 1,500 may not cover a lot of months, and are we just putting off the inevitable for some of these folks unless we maybe negotiate with the landlord before we write them that check, to have them waive any late fees, to maybe bring them all up to date for less than the full amount of the rent. I don't know if we're going to have that capability. So that's a question, but and then related to that is if we do buy a little delay here, is it, is that really all we're doing for these folks, is putting off the inevitable? And that bothers me a lot, because it'd be great if some of these landlords would just accept a lower number, allow us to make the money go further and really bring more people up to date. Are we going to have that capacity, Anna, to negotiate with the landlords before we write them that check?
Yeah, Commissioner Morris, you share our concern as well. In fact, that was one of our CFO's sort of primary points as we had this discussion. So I'll say up front that we are very, very much looking forward to any additional COVID-19 relief, particularly any directed toward rental assistance and mortgage assistance, hopefully, in the new COVID relief bill that the current administration is contemplating with the Congress. So we're very hopeful that additional funding in this regard will come that way. The other thing that I would mention is that in our regional conversations with ARC, Jack Harden has led an effort called SOAR, where he, along with other philanthropic leaders, are pulling together a regional model for rental assistance that would include leveraging private and philanthropic funds to match state and local government funds. But the primary innovation in the model is that they would at a higher level collectively negotiate with these landlords to reduce the back rent by eliminating some of the fees. That conversation is ongoing, and ultimately we believe that it will become the regional model for rental assistance, to negotiate with landlords to eliminate fees as well as reduce the back paid rent. That model is not yet ready for implementation, so we're not going to be leveraging it in the implementation of these funds. But I'll ask Dr. Rochelle to help us answer your direct question, which is whether or not we will be using that ability to negotiate with landlords as a part of our program.
So thank you, Anna. The Treasury guidance doesn't prohibit us from negotiating things like late fees. And so there are models such as the one that Anna just spoke of, as well as other nonprofits in the past have negotiated out the fees. And so we certainly plan to do that. One anecdotal piece of information that we've heard is, as landlord communities have heard or are aware of the funding, that they have been less willing to negotiate because they do know how communities are funded now. And so nevertheless, we will still look for any angle we can to negotiate those late fees especially.
Okay, Mayor Bodker, and then followed by Commissioner Hall again.
So piggybacking off of Commissioner Morris's comments, and I know the sentiment is shared by all of us, I would suggest that an opportunity for the mayors and commissioners to stand together and make a public plea for our landlords to consider voluntarily working with their tenants, our constituents, to come up with a fairer settlement, recognizing that the financial harm clearly is to both parties. Maybe we can do that as a sort of a PSA and an opportunity to try to do some good and apply some pressure from above.
Who's next? Commissioner Hall, Vice Chair Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is just based on, you stated that you will negotiate with the landlords, but I want to make sure that also includes the property management companies, because they at times will be a separate entity from the landlord.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
This is Pamela Rochelle. I was just saying thank you for that, and also thank you to Mayor Bucker.
So what's the answer to my question?
We will, the HUD guidance specifically states landlord, while we are clear that we may need to involve the property management company, because in most cases, they are the ones that reconcile the books on whose rent has been paid. And so we will ensure that there is clear communication with the landlord and the property management company as well, so that there are no missteps regarding the rent that has been paid on the tenant's behalf.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, other questions or comments at this time? Anyone else? Oh, Commissioner Mayor Ellis, Commissioner Ellis.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Dr. Rochelle too, and I think you mentioned, kind of early on that we would certainly be partnering with nonprofits, certainly for getting the word out about the program and surfacing folks that are in need and making sure they were aware of it. And presume that also could mean that those folks could help, assist them in that process. I guess also in the back end of that, we all know that probably every individual situation, they all are going to come that are going to come through this program are going to have different nuances to them in terms of employment capability, income streams, et cetera, how far behind they are, and why they are behind. And many of these nonprofits also have worked with a number of clients, on things like budgeting, doing some of the stuff that we're talking about right now in terms of negotiations with the individual landlords, et cetera. I would ask too that we, have that back end sort of referral to the folks that are coming in to us about these organizations on the ground for other forms of assistance, whether it be monetary or counseling support and that sort of stuff around financial counseling that these organizations could provide to these to the citizens that are coming through this program. I think that's an important aspect to this. Just talking to different individuals that are in current plights like this, they no one individual situation seems to be the same. They all have many different nuances to them.
Commissioner Ellis, for that, we'll certainly ensure that we have a robust referral process to be more comprehensive in serving constituents that are experiencing rent and utility issues.
Okay, Commissioner Abdur Rahman.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize. I don't know if the question that Commissioner Lee Morris asked about whether the county had the ability to negotiate with the landlord or the property manager before cutting the check. Was that ever answered? Because I didn't hear it. It could have been, but I think I may have missed it. The answer to the question Commissioner Morris asked about the ability to negotiate, I guess, a lower fee, or just if they're asking for a certain amount, if they would take a lesser amount, does the county have that ability? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We do have the ability to negotiate there's nothing in the Treasury guidance that prohibits us from doing so.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Who? Great, that's it. No one else? No one else. All right, anyone else at this time? And I see no other hands. I'm actually not told that there anyone else has his or her hand up. So Madam COO, do you have a sense of whether it's going to be 6 months and 1,500 cap or something less?
When we present the budget to the county manager as well as the remainder of our executive team on Tuesday morning, I think we will have a discussion and make a decision at that time. We are leaning toward the 1,500 as opposed to the 200, which is mapped out in the scenario, but we have not yet made a decision.
So you're looking at six months and it's 1,500. You meant 1,500 versus 2,000, right?
Yes, sir. But we are also taking all the comments that were received today into consideration as well.
Okay. Any strong feelings in one way or the other, colleagues or mayors?
Well, I've already voiced that I think that while I have great empathy for those that are in need, I think helping more a little is better than helping a few a lot. And so my hope is that we'll try to make the most good spread across as best we can. And I still encourage my fellow elected officials to figure out a way that we can stand together and send a strong message across the county that we are not just counting on the government to help here, but that we're also pleading with those who own these properties to do the best they can to help those that are utilizing those properties as well.
Well stated, Mr. Mayor. Anyone else? All right, it's 11:51. So I'm going to conclude then that will conclude the discussion on this part of our agenda. Any other matters to come before us under other business? Anything quickly?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everyone on the county level for working with the city of College Park to bring a vaccination location to the Georgia International Convention Center. We are excited about the partnership and the ability to help service the entire South Fulton region as we move through this pandemic. And I just wanted to get my thanks out on behalf of our community.
And it looks great. Mayor Holiday Ingram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know when we met last week, we had a robust discussion on T-Splice. I didn't feel like we reached any conclusion. Maybe I'm wrong on that. And I know today's agenda was not for that. But when we met in January, it was indicated that the February 5th meeting was a critical deadline or timeline, a deadline on the timeline for moving forward with T-Splice. And so while transit is definitely needed and a priority in South Fulton, there's consensus that we definitely want to make sure we keep T-Splice at minimum as is. We don't want to lose the opportunity. I mean, if we're going to still have those conversations around transit, my question is just where are we with that timeline, and do we need to have a meeting next Friday? Because my understanding last month was that February 5th was that date where we needed to make some decisions to be able to be on target for a referendum to be on the ballot this November.
All right, I mentioned a timeline at our last meeting and sent out a general timeline. Mr. Manager, would you like to address the timeline question?
Well, I guess, the first question to address is, did you reach a decision? And I thought, and I guess I could ask Mayor Bodker to re-summarize what he said, but it seemed pretty clear that you did reach a decision. Mayor Bodker, do you want to re-summarize?
Yes.
There's no need for re-summarizing. I'm aware of what was said, but when we finished that conversation, it did, in my mind, there was still a conversation about transit, and it didn't sound as if that we were moving forward. So if the county took that to mean that we're moving forward with 3A and the timeline is what has been shared, then that is fine. But I'm very aware of Mayor Bodker's position. I think it was a great summary of where we were. But I didn't hear from the county's perspective that that's the option that we're moving forward with, or are we going to continue to have a discussion or conversation around transit and moving forward. So I guess I'm asking from the county, based on the last meeting, if you're saying that was the summary, what did the county conclude from that meeting as it related to T-Splot, so that we're all on the same page?
And Madam Chair, after they conclude, I'd like to make a comment related to this.
Mr. Manager?
Yes, just responding to that, I thought we got pretty clear direction that 3A, which is a pure T-Splost approach, was the preferred option. So we are beginning to assemble the assistance necessary with your project list development. I think the only caveat that I thought we heard Mayor Bodker say in summary was, as we move along, and if the federal funding picture becomes more clear and is more favorable, based on all the input that we got from the three leaders that were present, that could be reconsidered in terms of perhaps being able to leverage federal funding with some level of local match. So what we are doing, or what we have done, is we're taking that direction, as I just stated. I've also reached out to both Russell McMurray and Chris Tomlinson to begin talking about what is a reasonable number if federal funding was much more readily available and perhaps required less of a match. So we do not have a number even for consideration at this point, but we have asked the question and asked them to provide that insight.
So I actually gave two caveats. And first, let me publicly congratulate you, Madam Chair of the South Fulton Municipal Association. I look forward to working with you on this. And you and I haven't had a chance to coordinate other than text. So we'll certainly get some regular cadence of mayor's meetings as we go through the project list development. This will be a little different than the last time we did it, when we all got to get in the same room and have these discussions. And it was actually a wonderful kumbaya moment for all of Fulton County. And we'll just have to do that virtually this time. But that said, my second caveat was that the cities clearly can still voluntarily allocate any portion of their T-Splost funds as part of their project list to go toward transit. And obviously in South Fulton, as an example, if each city were to put an amount aside collectively, that may get you what you need. If that is a high enough priority, obviously we'll have to consider the same thing up here in the north. But I would encourage my fellow mayors that we participate robustly in some general conversations about how we're going to go about our project list development. And what many of us forget when we get into that process is that this is actually supposed to be regional, meaning that there's a certain portion by law of projects that must have regional impact. I believe it's 30%, if I remember the law. So not only do we have to come up with our local projects, but we have to be coordinated so that we pass muster with the regional projects as well. So we've got a lot of work to do between now and May, but my expectation is that in May, we will be starting to have a reconvening of the mayors and the Fulton County Commission to be presenting a collective project list that meets all the qualifications of T-Splost, that either will or will not include transit. Certainly a lot will happen between now and then. And finally, we'll be looking at an IGA, because ultimately, no later than June, I believe, Dick, we'll have to be voting as individual cities to approve or not approve the IGA. And if 60% or more of the population votes in favor of that, then we move forward T-Splost.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, Commissioner Abdur Rahman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. County Manager, thank you for opening up the GICC. I did get quite a few calls from some constituents though, and I wanted to make sure that I did not misspeak. The Fulton Aviation is closed for vaccinations and will be closing for vaccinations, and the GICC, is that in the interim due to the low amount of vaccination available? Will it be reopened at a later date? What is the latest on that, so I can make sure that I do not misspeak? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Very good question. It will be closing, and the staff and the supply that was going to aviation will move to GICC. I think that's really one of the critical elements is, again, seeing the supply go up. So as an example, we are doing about 13,000 vaccinations this week. We've received supply for 2,500 for next week. Maybe that will change, but the unevenness of this supply is one element that we're dealing with. The other thing, and I went and visited GICC yesterday, that's really going to be terrific, is, and we appreciate the mayor and the staff there giving us such ready access, and it's that first room to the left as you drive in. So the access from the parking lot is great. The flow that the team has already set up is going to be tremendous. And the ability to do from 600 a day in vaccines, which is about what we're doing in aviation, could be expanded well up to 1,200 a day based on their estimates. Now, again, that's all conditioned on the availability of the vaccine. So we are making the governor's office directly aware of this move. He's interested. And the hope is that they will continue to prioritize, particularly with the kind of throughput that we can get there and the outreach that it represents. So it doesn't preclude us from reopening aviation at some point, or as was talked about on the other call last week, to go ahead and do mobile units, which we also are readying to do in various places where you have either faith-based organizations or other community sites. I was on the phone with Mayor Williams just this week talking about the backlot of City Hall, where we've done a lot of testing in Union City. So all of those are on the table, all somewhat conditioned by supply. The other thing that would be really helpful to make GICC the preeminent location, or certainly the one that we all want it to be, is gaining staffing support from each one of your cities. So I don't think we had any EMTs from South Fulton this week. We have had before, and I'm sure it's difficult to do, but if each city could commit themselves to providing one EMT a week, that would be very helpful based on what the staff has told me relative to the staffing needs.
So that goes, thank you for that. That goes into my next, I guess, question, comment. I did have a couple of nonprofit organizations that reached out to me that said, one, they had available space, and two, they had available volunteers. So I would like to work with you and just forward that information to you and let you know, and you can let me know if it's something that they can work with us. They recently reached out to me. And so I'm glad to be able to be on the same page with you with that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, that would be very helpful. And we'd love to, and that would go for anyone. As you're getting offers of help, we'll be building a list of those. And again, as the supply catches up with the demand, I think that'll be critical to reaching all of our communities.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, strike it. Mayor Motley Broom, please.
Thank you. First, I did want to thank our surrounding cities, because I know that a number of them have pledged their personnel to make the GICC as robust of an operation as we can, and we've even gotten retired medical professionals from our community who are interested in helping to volunteer as well. And I believe that they can go to servga.gov and sign up and affiliate themselves with the Fulton County Medical Reserve Corps. And so if there are folks who are interested in helping at the GICC and helping facilitate this process, we are certainly willing to have them in College Park, and want to make that process as easy as possible.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Holiday Ingram, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, could you resend that email that you sent with the T-Splice timeline and matters in it? I can't seem to locate it, so
yes,
be on my end, but if you could resend it, that would be great.
Thank you, will do. All right, it's about 12:02. Any closing comments? If not, I would like to thank each of you for your participation today, and more specifically, your acknowledgement of the good work that that our staff is doing. So no other matters that come before us today. We are adjourned. Thank you.